Captain Yoon-Hae-ri stood before the alien mothership's main reactor core with her remaining crew members. Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin and Engineer Bae Yeon-soo. The massive crystalline structure pulsed with energy that powered not just this ship, but provided power coordination for the entire invasion fleet. Destroying it would send feedback through the alien communication network, disabling every ship in the enemy armada. The reactor chamber was enormous, filled with energy that made the air itself glow with dangerous radiation. Her ship, the Invisible Thunder, was badly damaged and barely capable of flight, but it had brought them this far. Hae-ri knew that detonating her ship's reactor next to the alien core would create an explosion, powerful enough to tear the mothership apart from somewhere high above in the ship's superstructure. Pilot Young Woo's voice crackled through their communication system. "Captain, I have found their main communication array. I can create a feedback loop that will amplify your reactor explosion. It will destroy their entire fleet, but it is a one-way trip for me." His fighter had been damaged in the fighting, but he had managed to reach the ship's command center. Hae-ri felt proud and heartbroken. At the same time, Young Woo was barely 25 years old and he had his whole life ahead of him. But he was ready to sacrifice everything to save Earth, just like every other member of the Shadow Fleet. They had all known this day might come, and they had all accepted what it would cost, just as the human forces prepared to trigger the final explosion. Something completely unexpected happened. New voices began joining their communication network. Ships that were definitely not human, but also definitely not part of the hegemony. The translation computers struggled to keep up as dozens of different alien species announced their presence. Commander Park Soo-jin, monitoring the battle from her damaged ship in the outer solar system, received the first clear translation: "Human warriors. This is Captain Vextar of the Centauri Republic. We have been monitoring your battle. Your courage has inspired us to act. We fight alongside you." Now across the solar system, new ships began dropping out. Of hyperspace ships from the Centauri Republic, the Andorian Federation, the Tau Ceti Alliance, and dozens of other species that had been conquered or threatened by the hegemony. For years, they had waited for someone to stand up to the galactic bullies. Now humanity had shown them that resistance was possible. The alien reinforcements numbered in the thousands, representing 50 different species that had been waiting for exactly this moment. They had been secretly building fleets and sharing intelligence, hoping that someday someone would be brave enough to start a rebellion against hegemony rule. That someone turned out to be the humans from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy overlord. Vex watched in horror from his flagship as his invasion fleet found itself surrounded by enemies from across the galaxy. His sensors showed ships from species he had thought were completely defeated, appearing from every direction. The humans had done something no other species had managed. They had united the galaxy against him. The tide of battle shifted completely as the combined fleets engaged the hegemony forces. The aliens, who had seemed so powerful when fighting humans alone, were now outnumbered 10-1 by species they had thought were broken and scattered. The rebellion that had started with humanity's refusal to surrender was spreading across the galaxy. Inside, the mothership Captain Hae-ri received new orders from Admiral Dae-ho: stand down Operation Last Light. "The cavalry has arrived. You have done enough. Return to base if you can manage it." The desperate suicide mission was no longer necessary. The Shadow Fleet had accomplished something far more important than destroying one enemy. Ship Garter Lee Min-ho watched from his underwater facility as ships from dozens of worlds joined the battle around Earth. The humans had not just survived their first interstellar war, they had started a galactic revolution that would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The Shadow Fleet had become a symbol that inspired oppressed peoples everywhere. The hegemony fleet began a fighting retreat as they realized they were facing not just Earth, but a coalition of angry species that had been preparing for revenge. Overlord Vex transmitted his final message before his flagship was destroyed. Impossible. They were supposed to be primitives. How did they unite the entire galaxy against us? Jung-woo managed to extract his fighter from the mothership and rejoin the main battle, where he found himself flying alongside pilots from 20 different worlds. The young human had gone from being alone in enemy territory to being part of the largest space fleet in galactic history, all because his species had refused to give. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the hegemony invasion force. Those enemy ships that were not destroyed fled to distant parts of the galaxy, carrying news of humanity's victory. The species that had conquered 47 worlds had been defeated by the combined forces of their former victims. Admiral Kang Dae-ho stood once again on his command bridge. But now he looked out at a sky filled with ships from across the galaxy. Representatives from the various species were requesting permission to establish embassies on Earth and asking humanity to lead a new galactic alliance based on freedom and mutual defense. Earth had not just survived its first interstellar war, it had become the center of a new galactic government. Captain Hayri and the other Shadow Fleet commanders found themselves promoted to admiral rank and given command of mixed species fleets. The humans who had been ready to die in secret were now celebrated as heroes across the galaxy. The hegemony had expected Earth's surrender and had received instead a demonstration of why humans deserved their place among the stars. They had not won through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to give up when everything seemed hopeless. The Shadow Fleet became legend and humanity took its place as the defenders of galactic freedom. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a new galaxy where no species would have to bow to tyrants, where freedom was protected by beings who understood that some things were worth any sacrifice. The humans had started as the underdogs, but they had ended as the leaders of a free galaxy. 48 hours had passed since the invasion began and both fleets were bleeding badly in space. The Shadow Fleet had fought with incredible courage and skill, but the aliens were adapting faster than expected. Their new weapons and sensors were making human stealth technology less effective with each battle. Admiral Kang Dae-ho stood in his command center, looking at reports that showed the terrible truth humanity was losing. The alien mothership hung in space like a small moon blocking out the stars with its massive bulk. It was 300 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. The ship coordinated the movements of the entire invasion fleet and controlled all their communication systems. If it could be destroyed, the remaining alien ships would be blind and confused. "We are implementing Operation Last Light," Dae-ho announced to his senior staff. The room fell completely silent. Everyone in the command center knew what those words meant. The Shadow Fleet would make a direct assault on the alien mothership, knowing that most of them would not survive the mission. It was a suicide attack designed to save Earth, even if it cost every human ship in the fleet. Captain Yoon Hai-ri volunteered immediately to lead the assault. Her ship, the Invisible Thunder, would phase directly into the mothership along with 12 other vessels. They would fight through whatever defenses they found inside and destroy the massive ship from within. It was the most dangerous mission anyone had ever attempted. Pilot Choi Jung-woo and his squadron of 30 fighters would provide escort during the approach, knowing that they would probably all die before reaching the target. The young pilot had aged years during the past 2 days of fighting, but his determination had never wavered. He was ready to give his life if it meant saving his home world. The assault began exactly at dawn, Earth time. 13 Shadow Fleet ships disappeared from normal space using phase technology to pass through the mothership's shields and armor. They reappeared inside the alien vessel, finding themselves in a vast internal space filled with strange machinery and defensive systems. The inside of the mothership was like a metal ocean with corridors and chambers stretching in every direction. Automated defense systems came online, immediately firing energy weapons at the human intruders. Captain Hayri had to use every bit of skill she had learned to guide her ship through the maze of passages while avoiding weapons fire. Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin served as tactical officer on Hayri's ship, and he guided them through the alien vessel's strange layout, using sensors that had been specially modified to work inside enemy ships. "Captain, I am reading the main reactor core 2 kilometers ahead, but there are thousands of defense drones between us and the target," he reported. The battle inside the mothership was unlike anything in military history. Human ships fought room by room through alien corridors that were never designed for space combat. Shadow Fleet Marines, led by Sergeant Lim Dat-yoon, left their ships to fight on foot through passages filled with enemy soldiers and automated weapons. Dae-chun had trained her entire adult life for close combat in zero-gravity environments. Now she led 50 human Marines against thousands of alien defenders using weapons that could cut through any armor and tactics that confused enemies who had never fought humans before. Each step forward was paid for with blood, but the humans kept advancing. The alien defenders had never imagined that enemies could simply appear inside their most secure ship. They were designed to fight space battles, not room-to-room combat against boarding parties. The humans used this confusion to their advantage, moving through the ship in ways the aliens never expected. Captain Hai Ri pushed deeper into the mothership, even as her ship took damage from defensive systems that fired from every direction. Her crew worked frantically to keep the engines and weapons functioning, while she maneuvered through passages barely wide enough for her vessel to fit above them in the upper levels of the mothership pilot. Yung Wu had managed to penetrate the outer hull with his fighter. He was now flying through internal spaces that were never meant for aircraft, dodging between massive support beams and energy conduits, while searching for critical systems to destroy. Their human assault teams were taking heavy casualties, but they were getting closer to their objectives. The mothership's reactor core was heavily defended, but human determination was proving stronger than alien technology. Step by step, corridor by corridor, the Shadow Fleet forces fought their way toward the heart of the enemy ship. Dr. Lee Min-ho monitored the assault from his underwater base, watching as the bravest humans in history fought to save their species. He had given them the best technology he could create, but now success depended on courage and sacrifice rather than superior equipment. As the hours passed, it became clear that very few of the assault team would survive even if they succeeded in destroying the mothership, but none of them hesitated and none of them considered retreating. They had accepted that this might be humanity's last battle, and they were determined to make it count. The alien mothership shuddered as human weapons found critical systems throughout its massive structure, but the ship was enormous and heavily built. It would take more than conventional weapons to bring it down. The final phase of the assault would require the kind of desperate sacrifice that only humans seemed capable of making. Sergeant Dalwyn and her Marines reached the main computer core and began planting explosive charges that would disrupt the ship's ability to coordinate the fleet. Even if they could not destroy the mothership completely, they could blind it and leave the invasion force without central command. The stage was set for the final moments of Operation Last Light, and the outcome would determine whether humanity survived to see another day or died fighting in the depths of an alien warship. The Shadow Fleet had come further than anyone thought possible, but the hardest part still lay ahead. The hegemony was not defenseless, and they were not stupid. After their shocking defeat, they began adapting with frightening speed. Overlord Vex worked with his best scientists and engineers to develop countermeasures for human phase technology. Within 12 hours, they had created quantum tracking devices that could follow Shadow Fleet ships even while they were invisible. Commander Park Soo-jin found herself in serious trouble as alien ships surrounded her vessel. The Silent Storm. Her tactical officer, Sergeant Lim Da-yoon, was a young woman who had joined the Shadow Fleet program at 16, giving up her childhood to train for this war. Now she watched her instruments with growing alarm as enemy weapons locked onto their ship commander. The aliens have learned to track our phase signatures. We are sitting ducks if we stay in stealth mode. Da-yoon reported. The aliens had deployed new types of sensors throughout their fleet, and now human ships could not hide the way they had before. The technological advantage that had won the first battle was disappearing fast. The battle shifted dramatically as both sides adapted to each other. Soo-jin ordered her ship to switch to hit-and-run tactics, using speed and maneuverability instead of stealth. They appeared fired quickly and jumped away before the aliens could return fire. But this was much more dangerous than phase attacks, and human losses began mounting. Throughout the solar system, the Shadow Fleet reorganized into wolf packs of 5 or 6 ships that worked together to overwhelm single enemy targets. Captain Hai Ri led one such pack in a desperate attack on an alien supply convoy. Her ships appeared from different directions at exactly the same moment, forcing the enemy to divide their fire. The aliens countered by deploying thousands of automated fighter drones that could match human ships for speed and agility. The drones did not carry living crews, so they could make maneuvers that would kill organic beings. They swarmed around human ships like angry insects, trying to wear down their shields through sheer numbers. Pilot Yung Woo found himself dodging through clouds of enemy drones while trying to reach his target. Each drone was small, but their weapons could still damage his fighter. He had to use every trick he had learned in 20 years of training, spinning and diving through three-dimensional space while returning fire at targets that moved just as fast as he did. Back on Earth, Dr. Lee Min-ho worked around the clock to develop new weapons and defenses. Engineer Bae Yeon-soo had collapsed from exhaustion twice but refused to stop working. They were in a technological race with an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy, and they were running out of time. If we can reverse the polarity of our phase generators, we might be able to disrupt their tracking systems. Yeon-soo suggested. Her idea was brilliant but also dangerous. If it failed, every human ship using the modified technology would be defenseless. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential reward. The modifications were transmitted to the fleet within minutes, and Captain Hae-rai decided to test them immediately. She led 12 ships in an attack on a heavily defended alien battle group. Using the new phase technology, her ships flickered in and out of existence so rapidly that even the improved alien sensors could not keep track of them. The attack succeeded, but barely. 3 human ships were destroyed, and 2 more were badly damaged. The aliens were learning fast, and each battle became more deadly. Admiral Dae-ho realized that conventional tactics would not be enough to win this war. Humanity needed something more desperate, more dangerous, and more typically human. The battle for Earth had become a contest between human creativity and alien adaptability. Both sides were pushing their technology to the limits and beyond. The Shadow Fleet had proven that humans would not surrender, but now they had to prove that they could actually win a war against a vastly superior enemy. As the second day of fighting ended, both fleets were bloodied, but still dangerous. The aliens had lost over half their ships, but they still outnumbered the humans by more than 2 to 1. The Shadow Fleet had shown amazing courage and skill, but they were running out of ships and time. The next phase of the war would require sacrifices that no one wanted to make. Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin monitored the battle reports from the orbital defense station and saw that human losses were increasing with each engagement. The aliens were getting smarter, and their new weapons were deadly effective against human ships. Soon the technological advantage would be completely gone, and the war would come down to who was willing to sacrifice more. The stage was set for the most desperate gambit in human history, a direct assault on the alien command ship that would either end the war or result in the complete destruction of the Shadow Fleet. It was exactly the kind of impossible mission that humans specialized in, and exactly the kind of sacrifice that had made them survivors when stronger species had gone extinct. 24 hours before the alien deadline, Captain Yoon Hae-ri stood on the bridge of her ship, the Invisible Thunder, looking at displays that showed the enemy fleet spread across space like a metal disease. The aliens had arranged their ships in a formation that had worked for them in 47 previous conquests. They put their biggest ships in the center and surrounded them with smaller vessels, creating layers of defense that seemed impossible to break through. But the aliens had never fought humans before. They had never faced an enemy that could appear and disappear at will, that could strike from directions that should have been impossible, that could pass through their shields like they were not even there. The Shadow Fleet was about to teach the invaders their first lesson in human warfare. Hae-ri gave the order that started the war attack formation. Delta 7. All ships phase shift on my mark. She watched as her instruments showed over 400 human ships vanishing from normal space. The aliens would not be able to see them coming until it was too late for defense pilot. Choi Jung-woo sat in the cockpit of his fighter ship, feeling his heart pound as the phase drive activated around him. His ship was small and fast, built for hit-and-run attacks that would confuse and terrify the enemy. He had been flying in simulations since he was 12 years old, but this was his first real battle, and he was both scared and excited. The phase shift felt like falling through empty space while being struck by lightning at the same time. For a few seconds, Jung-woo existed in 2 places at once, partially in normal space and partially in something else that human scientists still did not fully understand. Then the sensation stopped and his ship materialized directly behind an alien battleship, all across the enemy formation. Shadow Fleet ships appeared without warning inside the alien defensive lines. Some materialized behind enemy ships. Others appeared above them, and a few came up from below where no attack should have been possible. The aliens had sensors that could detect ships from millions of kilometers away, but they had no defense against enemies that could simply ignore the laws of physics. First alien ship to die was a massive cruiser that had destroyed 3 different worlds in previous campaigns. Young-woo and 5 other human fighters appeared inside its shield perimeter and fired their weapons at point-blank range. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Its crew never even had time to send a distress signal. Overlord Vex watched from his command ship as his fleet began to fall apart around him. His tactical displays showed impossible readings, human ships appearing and disappearing like ghosts, weapons firing from empty space explosions happening inside his most heavily defended vessels. He had conquered dozens of worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. The alien commander tried to order his ships to adapt to this new type of warfare, but his crews were panicking. They had been told that humans were primitive, that their ships were slow and weak, that this would be an easy victory. Instead, they were facing enemies that could strike without warning from any direction at any time. Captain Hai-Ri guided her ship through the alien formation, using phase technology to pass through enemy hulls like they were made of air. She appeared in the center of 3 alien destroyers and fired a full spread of missiles before vanishing again. The missiles were designed with the same phase technology, allowing them to pass through shields and armor before exploding inside the enemy ships. The battle lasted only 2 hours, but in that time the Shadow Fleet destroyed almost 30% of the alien invasion force. The humans lost only 12 ships and most of their crews escaped in life pods before their vessels were destroyed. It was the most one-sided space battle in galactic history, and it sent shockwaves through both fleets. The aliens finally managed to adapt by deploying quantum scanners that could track phase signatures. But by then the Shadow Fleet had already withdrawn, leaving behind a field of wreckage that had been 300 enemy ships. The invaders realized that they were not fighting the primitive species they had expected. Back on Earth, Admiral Kang Dae-ho received battle reports that seemed too good to be true. Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin read the numbers with amazement in his voice. "Sir, we destroyed over 300 enemy ships in the first engagement. Our losses are minimal. The Shadow Fleet performed beyond all expectations." But Dae-ho knew that. This was just the beginning. The aliens would adapt to human tactics. They would bring new weapons and new strategies. The next battle would be much harder, and the one after that even more difficult. The Shadow Fleet had won the first round, but the war was far from over. Dr. Lee Min-ho worked frantically in his laboratory developing new countermeasures for the alien adaptations. His computers showed that the enemy was already modifying their ships to detect phase signatures. His assistant engineer, Bae Yeon-soo, had not slept in 36 hours as they raced to stay ahead of alien technology. The first battle had shown the galaxy that humans would not surrender without a fight. It had proven that Earth had weapons and tactics that no one had expected. But it had also revealed the Shadow Fleet's existence, and now the aliens would be ready for them. The next phase of the war would test whether human creativity could stay ahead of alien adaptation. Jung-woo and the other pilots returned to their hidden bases to refuel and rearm. They had tasted victory, but they also knew that the aliens would not be caught off guard again. The next battle would be fought between enemies who both understood what they were facing, and it would be much more deadly for everyone involved. The alien ships covered the sky like angry storm clouds. Admiral Kang Dae-ho stood at the big window of the space station, looking up at thousands of enemy ships that blocked out all the stars. The aliens had come with so many ships that counting them seemed impossible. Their huge metal vessels stretched from one side of Earth to the other side like a giant wall of death. Commander Park. Soo-jin walked quickly across the metal floor of the command room. Her boots made loud sounds on the hard surface. She carried a small device in her shaking hands. The device held the alien message that would change everything for humanity. She had spent 3 hours trying to decode the strange alien language, but finally the computers had figured it out. The alien voice that came from the device was cold and mechanical, like a robot speaking. It used perfect Korean words, but the tone made everyone feel scared. The voice said, "We are the hegemony rulers of this galaxy. You humans are weak and primitive. Like insects, we give you 72 hours to surrender completely. If you fight us, we will destroy every human man, woman, and child on your planet. This is what happens to all worlds that say no to us. You cannot win against our power, Daeho took the device from Sujin and squeezed it so hard that it broke into pieces. The plastic and metal fell to the floor like broken dreams. Around him, 50 crew members watched and waited. They were scared, but they were also angry. Their faces showed the same expression that humans had worn for thousands of years when someone threatened their home. Lieutenant Kim Woo-bin was only 25 years old, but he had been training for space combat since he was 15. He stepped forward and asked, "Admiral, what are our orders, sir?" His voice was steady and strong, even though his heart was beating fast like a drum. The young man had never been in a real battle, but he was ready to die for Earth. The Admiral looked out at the alien fleet again. Each enemy ship was bigger than any building on Earth. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with one shot. They had traveled across the galaxy, conquering world after world, and they had never lost a single battle. They expected humans to cry and beg for mercy like all the other species they had defeated. But these aliens had made one very big mistake. They thought humans were just another weak species that would give up when faced with superior force. They did not know that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They did not know that humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. They did not know that the harder you pushed a human, the harder they would push back. Daeho turned to face his crew and said, "Send the message to all stations everywhere. Activate Protocol Shadow. Tell every human commander that it is time. These aliens want to see what we are made of, so we will show them. Send word to the moon bases, to the asteroid mining stations, to every ship in the solar system. The 72 hours start now, but we will not be spending that time getting ready to surrender." The crew began working at their computers, sending coded messages across the solar system. Protocol Shadow was the most secret plan in human history. Only a few hundred people knew what it really meant. The aliens thought they were fighting a species with just a few dozen old spaceships. They thought this would be easy, like all their other conquests. They were about to learn that humans were very different from every other species in the galaxy. Sujin began coordinating with the other defense stations around Earth. She sent orders to the commanders on the moon and on Mars. Every human military base in the solar system received the same message. The time for hiding was over. The time for pretending to be weak was finished. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do. When someone threatened their home, young Kim Woo-bin started preparing the weapon systems on the space station. Even though their station was small compared to the alien ships, he worked hard to make sure every gun and missile was ready. He knew they would probably all die in the next few days, but he also knew that their deaths would mean something. They would show the aliens that humans would never give up, never surrender, never bow down to any conqueror. The alien commander on the biggest ship was named Overlord Vex. He had destroyed 47 different worlds and enslaved hundreds of species. He stood in his command room looking down at the small blue planet below. He expected the humans to send messages begging for mercy. He expected them to offer him their most valuable treasures. In exchange for their lives, he expected them to act like every other species he had ever conquered. But no messages came from the humans. No desperate pleas for mercy. No offers to surrender in exchange for their lives. Instead, the alien sensors detected something strange. Human ships were moving throughout the solar system, but they were not running away. They were not trying to escape to other star systems. Instead, they seemed to be getting into position for battle. Vex laughed at the readings from his sensors. The humans had maybe 50 or 60 small ships compared to his fleet of 3,000 massive warships. It would be like insects trying to fight eagles. The outcome was already decided, but he decided to wait the full 72 hours. Anyway, he wanted the humans to suffer with fear. He wanted them to realize how hopeless their situation was before he destroyed them completely. Back on the space station, Admiral Daeho received reports from across the solar system. Every hidden base, every secret facility, every classified research station was responding to Protocol Shadow. The aliens thought they knew everything about human military strength, but they were about to discover that humans were much better at keeping secrets. than anyone had imagined as the first day of the 72-hour deadline passed. Both sides prepared for what was coming. The aliens checked their weapons and planned how to destroy Earth most efficiently. They had done this so many times before that it had become routine for them. They expected this to be just another easy victory in their long history of conquest. The humans also prepared their weapons, but they prepared them in secret, in places the aliens could not see. They prepared weapons that had been hidden for decades, waiting for this exact moment. They prepared ships that officially did not exist, and crews that had trained their whole lives for a war they hoped would never come. But now that war was here and humanity was ready to show the galaxy something it had never seen before. Deep under the Pacific Ocean, in a place darker than space, Dr. Lee Min-ho walked through metal hallways that no government officially knew existed. The secret base had been built 20 years ago using money from black budgets that did not appear in any public records. For 2 decades, he had lived a double life, working as a normal scientist during the day and managing humanity's greatest secret during the night. The underwater facility was enormous, stretching for kilometers under the ocean floor. It contained laboratories, workshops, living quarters, and most importantly, massive shipyards that had been building warships in complete secrecy. The base employed 10,000 people who had all agreed to live their entire lives without ever telling anyone what they really did for work. Captain Yoon Hai-ri emerged from the main elevator looking like she had been born for this moment. She had been selected at age 10 based on tests that measured intelligence, reflexes, and psychological strength. Since that day, she had trained for only one purpose: to command ships that the rest of the world believed did not exist. She had given up having a normal life, having a family, having friends outside the program. All for this moment. Dr. Lee activated the main display system, and the entire facility lit up with holographic images showing the true strength of human military forces. The aliens thought Earth had maybe 60 combat ships scattered across the solar system. The reality was very different. Humanity had been building and hiding warships for decades, placing them in locations where no enemy would ever think to look. Some ships were buried deep inside asteroids disguised as mining equipment. Others were hidden on the dark side of the moon in caves that had been carved out by secret construction robots. A few dozen ships floated in the clouds of Jupiter, appearing on sensors as just more space debris collecting in the gas giant's gravity well. The largest group of ships waited in a hidden base built inside a hollowed-out comet that orbited beyond Pluto. Each ship in the Shadow Fleet was a masterpiece of human engineering. While other species had focused on building bigger ships with more powerful weapons, humans had taken a completely different approach. They had perfected the technology of stealth and surprise. Their ships were smaller than alien battleships, but they carried weapons and defensive systems that no other species had ever developed. The human ships could become completely invisible, not just to electronic sensors, but even to the naked eye. They used a technology called phase shifting that allowed them to exist partially outside normal space. This meant they could pass through solid matter like ghosts, appearing inside enemy shields to attack from impossible angles. They could strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could fight back. Every person who served on a Shadow Fleet ship had been training since childhood. They had learned to think faster, react quicker, and fight harder than any normal human could. They had been given genetic treatments that improved their reflexes and mental processing speed. They had spent years in virtual reality simulations fighting against computer programs that recreated every known alien combat tactic. Captain Hai-ri walked to her command station and began the activation sequence that would wake up the Shadow Fleet. The ships had been waiting in silent running mode, with their crews in rotating sleep cycles to keep them fresh and ready. Now it was time to bring them all back to full combat status. The activation codes she entered had been programmed 20 years ago by people who hoped they would never be used. The first ships to respond were the ones hidden in the asteroid belt. They had been disguised as mining platforms for so long that even some humans had forgotten they were really warships. But now they began shedding their fake outer hulls, revealing sleek predator shapes underneath. Their weapons came online, their shields activated, and their crews reported, ready for combat. More ships reported in from their hiding places on the outer moons of Saturn, from deep space stations that had been listed in official records as scientific research facilities, from bases built inside mountains on Mars. that were supposed to be geological survey teams. Each ship that came online added to a growing fleet that would soon show the alien invaders what humans were really capable of. Dr. Min-ho watched the activation process and felt proud and terrified at the same time. He had spent his entire adult life working on this project, giving up chances for fame and recognition because the work had to remain secret. He had developed new types of armor that could absorb energy weapons, new engines that could move ships faster than light without making any noise, and new computer systems that could think almost as fast as human brains. The Shadow Fleet represented everything that humans were good at. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy or the smartest or the most technologically advanced, but they were the most stubborn, the most creative, and the most willing to sacrifice everything for their survival. They had taken 20 years to build a secret fleet that could fight enemies much more powerful than themselves as the last ships came online. Captain Hyrie realized that she was looking at over 400 warships each one, crewed by people who had given up normal lives to prepare for this war. The aliens had given humanity 72 hours to surrender, but it would not take nearly that long to show them their mistake. The Shadow Fleet was ready to launch, and when it did, the aliens would discover that humans had been preparing for this war much longer than anyone had imagined. They would learn that appearances could be very deceiving and that the small blue planet they thought would be an easy conquest was about to become their worst nightmare.